Hey guys, I just wanted to say before the video started that we hit 1,000 subs. That's insane to me. I really appreciate all of you guys watching the videos, liking, commenting, and subbing. I never thought I'd hit 1,000, so it's absolutely unreal. Thank you guys so much.
We only have one story to talk about today, and I have to say it's kind of sad. Okay? As you guys know, this last 1 to 2 weeks, I forget exactly what the date was. Excuse me.
Because every good news segment starts with the anchorman not knowing the exact dates of things and then immediately clearing their throat. This is a professional streamer who wants to do a fake news bit, but he can't be bothered to have any sort of professional setup or at least act somewhat professional at all. He can't even have the dates of the things that he's talking about, which is as simple as one Google search.
CD Projekt Red released the long-awaited update and DLC expansion for Cyberpunk 2077 called Phantom Liberty. This was well anticipated by fans of CD Projekt Red, especially after, as we all know, the insanely bad launch of Cyberpunk, the 2 to 3 years they've now been patching and trying to fix and upgrade this game. And finally, with this update, supposedly, the game is supposed to be playing at its full capacity of what it was actually intended to be. Alright?
I mean, this is genuinely good news for the gaming community, and especially those who enjoyed that game. It's always a positive story when developers realize that they didn't give you the game they should have given you, and instead go back and maintain it and fix it to give you the game that they wanted to give you. Now, should it have ever happened? Absolutely not, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
The bugs are fixed. The world supposedly now functions, right? Police work better now. Gameplay elements have been improved. And people are overall saying it is a much better game than it was 2-3 years ago at launch. Now, for transparency purposes for everyone here, I played it at launch, all right? Even though the game had tons of technical issues, which of course everyone made fun of, that actually wasn't my criticism of the game. My problem was that I felt the core gameplay elements just weren't very fun. You had gunplay and hacking and environmental exploration that was very similar to Deus Ex, only Deus Ex did it better.
Okay, and a lot of games are very similar to games that did it better. And even though Deus Ex may have done it better back in the day, and that's entirely subjective because I don't like Deus Ex almost at all. If you're looking for a game similar to Deus Ex, Cyberpunk would be a good fit for you if that's what you like, even if Deus Ex did do it better. And that's a niche that it can fulfill. And there's nothing wrong with filling a niche. I mean, Phil should know this because I'm pretty sure that's what he means when he says he does curated content, is that he fills a niche. But games like Deus Ex don't come out all the time, so in the meantime, if Cyberpunk comes out and isn't nearly as good, at least it's something similar to that you can enjoy, that kind of fills that hole for a while. I personally couldn't see Phil enjoying Deus Ex at all. I think it's a little complicated for him, and I think a lot of the themes will go directly over his head and he won't enjoy it. So that's not a style of game that he's probably into anyway.
You had, you know, almost gunplay similar to Borderlands in a lot of cases, almost like it was a looter shooter, and I think Borderlands did it better.
And this is a personal hot take of mine. I don't particularly care for the Borderlands series at all. I haven't enjoyed it since the first one. And while Cyberpunk did have looting and shooting mechanics, it wasn't exactly the experience that I got out of the game. I spent a lot of my time sniping people through walls with a high-powered sniper rifle, and that was pretty much my gameplay loop. Not a whole lot of looting and shooting and comparing gun stats all the time. They weren't beating the high-powered sniper rifle through the wall trick.
The narrative-based structure of the game, I felt that other RPGs had done it better.
But what RPGs? Like, can you give me examples in that category, please? Because you gave examples in the other two categories. Say what you want about Cyberpunk being a buggy mess or not enjoying the gameplay loop. The story was the most interesting part of the game, pretty much up until the very end, which I don't even believe he got to. And even at the end, where there were some parts that were super stupid, like, it was genuinely a good story. So I'm really curious as to what example he would have provided as to an RPG that had a better story that he's immediately thinking of.
You know, the world, at first, admittedly, the world was intriguing to me. The world of this post-apocalyptic, you know, cyberpunk deal, where everything's been commercialized, right?
Yeah, that's typically how you would describe a cyberpunk setting, sure. And again, a very unique setting, because while there is games that are set in a cyberpunk setting, not too many of them are a first-person shooter RPG at that scale. So being able to explore the city that is Night City in a cyberpunk setting is super cool, and kind of an experience that cyberpunk does really well, because there's not really too many other examples I can think of. At least not to that scale and not in modern gaming.
And it's fun for like maybe 5 hours. And then after 5 hours, essentially, we basically get to a point where it's like, okay, this is not fun anymore, because everywhere I go, it's like a billboard, and the billboard is like so obnoxious. It's like, you know, a big robot penis or something. And oh yeah, you know, pay for the pump machine sucker or whatever. You know, okay, I get it. Sex is commercialized. Health is commercialized. You could customize your body. It's all commercial. I get it. But when you see it for like the 5th, 7th, 10th, 20th, 40th, 80th hour, it's just not, it doesn't have the same impact. Instead, it's just obnoxious.
I don't quite understand what a billboard in the world really has to do with you having fun as far as the whole game and the gameplay aspect goes at all. But I think this is really the crux of why DSP didn't enjoy Cyberpunk, because we all know that he has a very strange aversion to any sort of sexual content at all. I mean, the jury is still out on why. It could be a plethora of things, from he just doesn't get any, to he's ashamed of his old content, to he can't get it up anymore, but that's none of my business. But really what's more important than that is that I'm pretty sure that that is the point of the setting, is it not? I'm no academic. I'm not some big brain intellectual thinker by any means. But I'm pretty sure that one of the themes typically of a cyberpunk setting that's hyper corporatized is the constant gratuitous ads that just become so mundane and part of the day-to-day that they're just uninteresting, even though they are supposed to be hypersexualized and interesting. The first couple times you see it, it's like, wow, I can't believe they would put that on a billboard. That's wild. But then as you see it again and again, it becomes part of your daily routine like it does in the game world. And you become used to it and numb to it, and it's just the way the world works. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but that's part of the level of immersion, is you kind of get numb to it the same way that the people in the world would. And getting complacent to it is kind of part of the lesson that the game is trying to give you. It seems like any sort of this deeper thinking has completely gone over DSP's head, much like I said the themes of Deus Ex would, so this is pretty on brand.
You know what I'm saying? And it seems like the entire universe is based around this premise. It's like, okay, the universe of The Witcher has some gross, obnoxious stuff, but it's also kind of a fun fantasy universe. The universe of Cyberpunk is literally just obnoxious. It's not fun. It's actually annoying. Like, I didn't find it fun or interesting. After the first few shock value hours, it just becomes so, like, you're so desensitized to everything in the world that the whole appeal of it isn't funny anymore, you know?
It's not supposed to be a funny setting. Nothing about Cyberpunk is supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be dark and gritty. It can be funny. There can be funny moments. Just like in any dark times, there can always be funny things that happen. But the reality is the situation in which they're in sucks. The setting is absolutely miserable for 99% of the people. Not every game has to be a comedy show. There's a serious story being told the majority of the time in a pretty serious setting, with brief moments of levity. And again, there's nothing wrong with telling a serious story. I wish more games told more serious stories.
And there's entire plot lines kind of based around this. Like, this is stupid, you know? A lot of the content is superfluous or not interesting that's in the game.
Any mechanic or aspect to a game that is mainly about world building is always superfluous and uninteresting to DSP, because he's straight up just not interested in exploring your world further than just beating the game and doing the main plot so his audience doesn't yell at him. A prime example of that is the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom playthrough that he did. He skipped a bunch of dungeons and a bunch of enemies just so that he could rush the final boss and then say like, oh, I didn't need to do that stuff anyway because none of the rewards I got would have helped me beat him anymore because I didn't have a hard time to begin with. But that's not always necessarily why they put things into video games. You're supposed to have fun in video games. You're supposed to enjoy the world and sandbox that they give you. And they give you these side activities, not because they're the most interesting thing in the world, but to give you something to do in that sandbox, to provide a goal and expand the world a little bit maybe. But again, all DSP cares about is just putting it on the conveyor belt, running through it as fast as possible, making a bunch of crude jokes that nobody cares about, and then getting it off the conveyor belt because it's done so we can move on to the next game. But how can he make jokes when there's themes of sex in the game and he's married, dude?
Out of all the quest lines I did, like my favorite quest lines was there was a serial killer you had to hunt down with the detective companion. That was fun. And there was a plot line where a politician was being mind controlled and used as a puppet for a giant like organization, clandestine group. That was really neat. Those plot lines resonated with me, and I still remember them years later because they were so well executed, okay?
Those plot lines were super good. I'll give them that. Those were banger missions.
But for every one of those plot lines, there was a dumb cyberpunk plot line that was over the top, drugs and sex and stupid, and it wasn't interesting. It was just dumb and hackneyed, in my opinion.
I mean, a lot of people in a cyberpunk setting are rather destitute. So yes, themes of sex and drugs is typically prevalent in a cyberpunk setting. But also one of the main characters is Johnny Silverhand, who was in a rock and roll band in a cyberpunk setting. I don't know if you know this about rock stars, but they tend to have a lot of sex and do a lot of drugs. I mean, that's just the way real life is too. Don't shoot the messenger.
Lowbrow, bad writing, just shitty. And when you combine gameplay elements from other franchises that are done better in other franchises with a world that just wasn't that interesting but more annoying than anything.
I've never heard anybody describe Cyberpunk's world as annoying. This is an entirely unique opinion held only by DSP purely because he's uncomfortable with sex.
Like I told you guys, when I was playing Cyberpunk, I probably enjoyed myself 20% of the time I played the game. Only 1/5 of the time that I played Cyberpunk 2077 did I have any fun. That's not good. That's a very low percentage rate.
Almost as low as your win-loss rate in master ranking. Oh ho. I'm just playing around. I don't know the actual numbers on that. I just wanted to get a jab in.
Okay? So when you guys asked me, hey, are you going to buy Phantom Liberty and play it? Did you hear they improved the game? You know what my answer is? Fuck no. I'm not spending any more money on that game. I didn't like the original, and it wasn't because the game was a broken mess at launch. It's because the game just itself wasn't fun. It was a 20% enjoyment rate game for me, so why would I put myself through that? I know it'll happen. I'll buy the expansion. It'll run better. It won't have crashing. It won't have graphical issues. The police probably work better. And I'll just sit there, and I'll be bored to tears, not liking the game, and then there'll be one mission I like, and then I'll be bored to tears again.
I always say this about DSP. The reason that such mundane things get blown out of proportion and become a meme against him is simply because of the way that he reacts to them. Because people kept asking him if he was going to check out Cyberpunk again after the Phantom Liberty DLC and after the 2.0 update. And instead of being a normal human being and just saying, no, the game really wasn't for me when I played it, I didn't enjoy myself, and just leave it at that, he always just got so hostile about it every time I seen him answer the question. And that sort of hostility lets people know that you're bothered by the question, and they're gonna keep doing it because it's fun to mess with you. And it's the same exact thing in his DSPN news segment about Cyberpunk. He couldn't get through the actual news on the game without getting up in arms and agitated about the game. And again, this is a news segment. I don't think you're allowed to get hostile on the news. When you're supposed to just be reporting what happened to Cyberpunk and instead you want to give your dent-headed opinion on it, that's not exactly a very good segment. I mean, it's a good segment for us and me who gets to make this video, but as far as telling the actual news goes on a news segment, absolutely not. That's atrocious.
You know? So that's why I didn't get it. But more power to you. If you're someone who wanted to play more Cyberpunk, maybe you enjoyed Cyberpunk a lot, and you're upset that it was such a broken mess at launch, you've been waiting for them to fix it, and now they fixed it, enjoy, right? The expansion is out. But why am I bringing this up on DSP News?
When he originally started this segment live, I actually thought that he wanted to talk about the layoffs that happened over at CD Projekt Red and their attempts to unionize recently, because I had just seen that story that day. It had came out a couple hours before he started the stream. So I was almost impressed that he had news that was that recent, something that had broke that day. But unfortunately, it's for something so much dumber. So I'm taking any of the kudos that I was going to give to him, I'm taking it back.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, since Phantom Liberty released, what was it, 2 weeks ago? Okay, you ready for this? It sold a meager 3 million copies. For the record, Cyberpunk sold way, way more than that overall as a new release.
Yes, because 3 million copies is meager according to DSP. Now, it's not the best numbers in the world, but hey, 3 million DLC sales? I'd imagine that's pretty decent. And he points out that Cyberpunk sold way over that on its initial release. Like, yeah, Cyberpunk was a super hyped AAA game that came out. It was a DLC that just came out 2 weeks ago. So not only are you really only looking at the people that are going to buy this being people who already own Cyberpunk, so it basically has to sell less than Cyberpunk, but it also has to be a fraction of Cyberpunk's player base that still wants to play Cyberpunk, isn't busy with all of the other games they're playing, and is willing to shell out the $30 without some sort of sale to pick up the DLC. It's not a shock to me at all that the DLC did not sell absolute gangbusters like Cyberpunk did.
Meaning, the vast majority of people who have Cyberpunk opted to not play the expansion. They just don't care about it anymore. First impressions were a bitch, and since the game was junk at launch, they have no desire to go back and play this expansion.
I can't speak to the qualifying statement of the vast majority because I don't know the vast majority. I don't know their circumstances, but neither does DSP. So him saying that is it's just not accurate because he doesn't know. No one does. All of my friends who played Cyberpunk are interested in getting the DLC and none of them have picked it up yet because none of us really buy games at full price anymore and we don't buy DLCs at full price typically either. Not to mention, most of us are still playing other games that we're currently in the middle of. So why would you buy a DLC for a game if you're not even going to get around to playing it for quite a while when you could maybe catch it on sale in the meantime? They also intend on starting a fresh character when they buy the DLC. So they intend on spending quite a lot of time to play the DLC when they do finally get around to doing it. So to just blanket assume that it's because people didn't like the game when it came out because it was a buggy mess is just disingenuous. You genuinely don't know.
All right. Now, the problem with that is that CD Projekt Red spent the vast majority of their time and resources fixing this game in the last 2 years. So, literally, all they worked on was this. It came out, and only a very small percentile of those who bought the game care.
Regardless of the DLC sales, which I personally don't care about video game sales numbers at all, man. I just play video games. But besides from the numbers, it's not a bad thing that they spent the time and resources to fix their game. That should go a long way with their customer base. I mean, look at the success of No Man's Sky. Now, I'm not saying Cyberpunk's gonna be anything like that, but I have heard positive reception about the new update. And if No Man's Sky has proven anything, it's that taking care of your game and doing right by your customers is the good thing to do. And it's really strange to me that DSP wouldn't take the time to give kudos to the studio for doing right by the customer, because he's quick to tear down his studio for doing wrong by their customer. Just another example of not being able to please this guy.
So what does that mean? It means that the company is in hot water because, ladies and gentlemen, after these sales results were announced, listen to this. You ready for this? The value of CD Projekt Red has dropped 27% in a week. Over 1/4 of the value of the company was lost on the publicly traded stock market because people are not buying this expansion.
It's always so strange to me when he wants to bring up like stock numbers or sales, this, that, and the other, you know? Because he always goes on about how he's the common gamer, how he's here to give you the truth. He's just a normal guy who streams the content you want to see. But I don't know why any normal gamer would be concerned with any studio's stock prices. I don't know why it would be any of their concern whether or not the DLC sold well. Most normal gamers would just play the things that they like and then not play the things that they don't like. If they want to take it to the next level, they might hate on things that they don't like. But to be concerned about the stock of a company and how much the DLC is selling, I really just don't get how that's anybody's concern unless you're involved in the corporate world, or you're actively looking to trade the stocks of CD Projekt Red. And I promise you, Jade is not trying to trade stocks. And he does this a lot where he talks about things that don't actually matter to the common gamer. And he did this the other day when he was talking about the president or CEO of Sony that's retiring. I genuinely don't know what their title is. My only thought through the whole segment was, who the hell cares who the president or CEO of Sony is? If they do right by you, buy their product. If they do wrong by you, don't buy their product.
Sad part is that people playing it are saying it's good. They're like, it's good, it's reviewed well, but people just, in general, don't want to go back to this game. They say the game was supposed to be good 2 years ago. We don't care about going back and spending more money on this expansion. You should have had the game good 2 years ago at launch.
And DSP knows that everybody that didn't buy the DLC is saying this, because obviously he went and talked to all of them individually. This totally wouldn't be a broad generalization of a large group of people that he has no interaction with ever, because he would never do that.
So the problem with that is, all right, according to the reports about CD Projekt Red, all right, listen to this.
And we all know that when he says reports, he's just talking about tweets that he found, that he couldn't even be bothered to screenshot. He's literally pulling them up live.
It cost them almost $100 million to make Phantom Liberty, which is a humongous budget for just an expansion, okay? The next release that CD Projekt Red is planning on making, all right, is many, many years down the road. You know, they already have announced multiple Witcher products, correct? So I think there's like a new Witcher. I don't know if it'll be Witcher 4. I think there's supposed to be a spin-off as well. And they've already said there'll be no further updates to Cyberpunk. This was it. Now they're going to start working on Cyberpunk 2. Okay. In addition, CD Projekt Red had already announced that their next plan is to open a new studio in North America, which is going to be all new employees that they need to hire to start designing new games. So what is going to happen is the question, because if they've lost over a quarter of their value of a company in 1 week, unless sales start to spike for Phantom Liberty, this could be disastrous for the company. It could be seen that this company, even though it could be publicly seen they did the right thing, right? They developed the product, they released it 2 years ago. It was broken. It was buggy. It was completely unfinished. It should not have been sold in that state. It became the whipping boy of the gaming community, right? Everyone jumped on that bandwagon and making fun of Cyberpunk. And they knew to save face, to get back to being a reputable game developer, they had to fix this problem. They took 2 years and $100 million to do it. They knew that if they didn't, if they just said, fuck it, let's not do it, all right? Let's just move on to the next. I think it actually would have made them look worse, right?
Well, the corporate world's rough. So if they go under, they go under. But I highly doubt that this one misstep of a DLC not selling as good as they think it would have is going to send them under, especially when, like I said, Cyberpunk sold gangbusters. And people still run around acting like The Witcher 3 is the greatest game that's ever been released, despite it being mediocre in my eyes. I know, another me hot take, deal with it. But like I said, it's rough out here, so if that is what happens to them and they go under because of one mistake, like that's the way it's gotta be. I have no loyalty to them. I don't owe them anything. I bought the games that I wanted to play from them, and that's all I can do. As an everyday normal gamer, I don't particularly care about their stock prices or the well-being of their company. All I care about is the games that they put out and whether or not they are good and enjoyable.
But in this case, I guess financially was it the right decision? Because even though they put all this time, effort, and money into fixing their wrong, right? It doesn't seem like the vast majority of people who bought the original game really even care. And now Wall Street is upset with that, the fact that all this time and effort for the last 2 years seems to have kind of been a waste, and now they've lost a lot of their value. And again, when you don't have another product right around the corner to sell and start making money for your company again, and you already have planned expansions, that's going to be even more money spent, that is not good.
I'm going to be 100% honest. This segment is all over the place, and I have no idea what a lot of these things have to do with each other at this point. I know they're all CD Projekt Red related, but he went from hating all over Cyberpunk to talking about the DLC sales numbers to talking about their stock prices, and then he was talking about their future plans and their plans to expand and their next games, and now he's debating on whether or not they should have released the DLC and fixed their game at all. Like, I can kind of see the correlation, but I don't really understand what we're doing here talking about all of these things. Maybe I'm just dented at this point. Maybe I've lost it. But yeah, CD Projekt Red should have finished Cyberpunk and fixed it. There's no debate in my mind that they did the right thing by their consumers by fixing the game that they sold them.
So what will happen? We don't know. You know, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't think that one horrible mistake should be the end of anything.
Like I said, corporations, they're pretty cutthroat. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. There's really not much more to it than that. And much like the Cyberpunk setting, the games industry has become more and more corporatized at this point. So I'm not shocked when companies rise and fall at the drop of a hat.
I don't think that because CD Projekt Red goofed the launch of Cyberpunk, even though I don't like Cyberpunk, all right? It's fine for me to not like the game and move on and not have to harp on this company, you know, in a negative way. You know what I'm saying? I still like things CD Projekt Red has done. I really like Witcher 3. I want to see more Witcher games. I would like to see them do other projects. If they make a Cyberpunk 2, I probably won't care. But there are other things I feel that they are up to the task of making great games. And I don't think that this one mistake should be a permanent slight on their record forever. I think they can still do great things. I don't want to see the company tank now.
Of course you don't, DSP, because the incident would have been the end of you. This has got to be one of the few times I've ever heard him say that he doesn't want something bad to happen to his studio. Because usually he's very negative to video game studios, talking about how they deserve what's coming to them and how they messed everything up, and even sometimes how they're plotting against him. So I guess he's got to get a big ups for that. It is kind of the bare minimum, though, to not want a studio to go defunct simply because they made a game that you didn't like, especially when the only reason that you really didn't like the game was because it had sex in it.
Because this one mistake that they're gonna forever never live it down, right? I hope that's not the case. I hope that this is maybe just a temporary thing and they will recover from it. I really don't want to see them fail as a company because of this. But yikes.
And DSP needs to stop saying yikes. That man is way too old to be saying yikes. I know he picked it up from Cat, but he really should understand that it's not a good look on him and he needs to stop doing it.
Yeah, losing 27% of the value of your company is a horrible thing to happen to any company. And especially when it's like, oh, we're after 2 years of effort fixing our mistake, hopefully this goes well, and then immediately you lose 27% of the value of your company the moment it releases. It's like, huh? Like, wait, no, that's not what was supposed to happen. We were hoping it would go the other way. No. Anyway. There you go. That's the news. That's it. That's all I got. I was looking for more news. I couldn't really find much other news for today. So that's what I got for today. Hopefully the day recover. All right.
And I wanted to leave that last little chunk in there because if you recall earlier, I said that there was a breaking story that day about CD Projekt Red, that their devs are looking to unionize in Poland due to the 3 different layoffs that have happened this year. And I just wanted to point that out because right at the end, he goes, oh, I tried to find news. You're meaning to tell me that when he was pulling up these tweets about the Cyberpunk DLC sales numbers, those didn't pop up at all? Nothing about the unionization of the devs came up at all. This dude talked on and on about both the Hollywood Actors and the Writers Guild strike and all the unions involved in that, and even talking about voice actors unionizing, but he couldn't find the news that came out that day about CD Projekt Red's unionizing. It just goes to show you he's not a very good newsman. But that's gonna do it for today's video. I wanted to look at it because it was a little dance on the grave of Cyberpunk, and it looks like Philly might be outliving something else. Potentially, I mean. Big shout out to all of you guys for watching. I always appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for the 1,000 subscribers. I really never expected to hit 500, let alone 1,000. Hopefully you guys stick around and I'll see you in the next video. But until then, make sure you check out other Detractor channels and dive deeper into that Snortax.